Flames lashed across the wooden beams, snapping like furious whips while the night hung heavy with smoke that scraped at my lungs. I held my infant son tightly against my chest, his small body trembling, his cries muffled into the curve of my arm as I stumbled down the staircase. Heat thundered around me, and for one terrifying breath I thought we would both be consumed. I slammed my foot into the front door with every ounce of strength left in me. The icy night air rushed in, cruel and almost mocking. In its relief, I had barely stepped onto the porch when the door slammed shut. Behind me, the metallic click biting through the chaos of the fire. "Where do you think you're going?" My father's voice barked from inside, rough, cutting through smoke and flame. I spun, pounding at the door, arms aching, as I clutched my son even harder. Please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Please open this door. The fire's everywhere. We have to get out. I cried, my throat raw, my voice splintering. Through the crackling blaze, my mother's laughter echoed, sharp and merciless. "You got your brat out, didn't you? Don't think you're finished. Go back. Your sister's dog is worth more than you'll ever be." Her words sank deeper than the smoke, splitting me open. I hammered at the door harder, desperation in every strike. "Are you out of your mind? There's no time. The stairs are caving in. If I go back, I'll—" My father's voice cut in, low with contempt. "Better you than that dog. At least he brings happiness to this family. You've been nothing but dead weight since the day you were born." I stumbled back, shaking my child, pressing against my chest like a heartbeat. Outside my body, he whimpered softly, fists tangled in my shirt, as if feeling every shuddering wave of terror pouring out of me. Through the blazing windows, I saw them, my parents, deliberately pulling shut the curtains, sealing me out with cruel precision, as if my screams were just background noise for their theater. The night air froze my bare feet. Behind me, the house erupted, glowing like a furnace carved from betrayal. Neighbors trickled in, murmuring, faces caught between horror and disbelief as they realized my parents had locked me out. But they didn't move quickly enough, didn't speak loudly enough to quiet the echo of my mother's voice still twisting in my head. "Save the dog first. Let the trash burn." I pressed my face down into my baby's soft hair, whispering through tears, "I will never forgive them. Not ever." That night, it wasn't only flames eating timber and walls. It was fire devouring the last thread of hope that my parents might one day see me as human. Barefoot in the frozen dark, my son's cries slicing through the roar of the blaze, I vowed, if they prized a dog above their own daughter and grandson, I'd make sure that choice would be the ruin of them. The fire truck screamed into the street, lights flaring red through the smoke-drenched night. Neighbors pointed, gossiped, shook their heads, but none of them knew the truth. Not really. They only saw me outside, barefoot, trembling, a child in my arms, smoke clinging to my skin like another layer I could never shed. They assumed I was just fortunate to get out alive. What they never noticed was my parents standing at the window, expressionless as I pounded my fists raw and begged through the glass. They never caught the venom in my mother's voice, her taunt carrying like poison. "Better you burn than her dog." The firefighters rushed inside, breaking doors, unraveling hoses. Through tears I shouted at them, "My parents are still in there." But a part of me didn't mean it. A part of me wanted them to breathe the smoke, to taste the same suffocating air they forced on me and my child. Only minutes later, they stumbled out, coughing, wrapped in emergency blankets, soot smeared across their faces. My sister clung to her dog like it was treasure, and my parents, astonishingly, glared at me as if I'd let them down. "You couldn't even go back in for him," my mother snapped, pointing toward the wagging golden retriever in my sister's arms. I trembled, shielding my baby closer. "I had your grandson in my hands. You locked us out. You could have killed us both." Dad sneered, his mouth curling into that familiar smirk he wore whenever he wanted to remind me I was worthless. Stop acting like a victim. If family meant anything to you, you'd have gone back inside. Instead, you stood out here, a coward. Neighbors shifted, whispering, their eyes on me, a mother trembling, pale from smoke and humiliation. And it hit me my parents weren't ashamed. They weren't, even pretending. They were savoring the cruelty. For days afterward, the fire itself was the smallest of my wounds. My parents laid blame squarely on me. My mother stormed through the house, raging about. Curtains ruined by smoke, but insisting it was my fault for panicking. My father grumbled about the cost of repairs, snapping that if I had any sense, the dog never would have been in danger. At night, I cradled my baby in the cramped room they shoved us into, four walls with peeling paint, a drafty crack in the window, a mattress as thin as cardboard. From there, I could hear them celebrating that the dog was alive, laughing at me. Finally showing her true colors, Mom sneered. Asterisk crying. On the porch while the rest of us sat down to dinner. Useless, asterisk. Trash belongs outside, Dad added with a chuckle. And she proved it. My sister, stroking her dog, threw me a smirk. Asterisk, he's better than your kid. At least he doesn't cry all the time, asterisk. Their words sliced into me, but I stopped responding. I didn't shout, didn't argue, didn't try to remind them that I mattered. My silence became my shield. Silence sharpened my thinking. And so I started seeing how Dad bragged to his buddies about being the strong head of household while their debts climbed higher. How Mother boasted about giving to charity, meanwhile pocketing money for herself. How my sister flaunted that dog everywhere, filling the internet with pictures of her perfect life, erasing me entirely. They believed they had stripped me of my dignity. What they didn't realize was that I was saving every insult, every cruel laugh, every slammed and locked door. Each wound they gave me was fuel, kindling for a fire. I planned to strike, deliberate and patient, one spark at a time. I began helping out, watching their kids, running small errands, pitching in wherever I could. Little by little, they stopped viewing me as the shadow my parents had convinced them I was, and instead started to see me as a real, reliable person. Bit by bit, the light shifted. The next hit came during my father's poker night. He lived for boasting about his financial triumphs. That night, I walked in carrying proof, contracts with his signature, debts he couldn't cover, loans he'd secretly begged for. I didn't raise my voice. I simply placed the papers on the table before his friends and turned around. The silence that lingered behind me was more crushing than any shouted accusation. When it came to my mother, documents weren't necessary. All she needed was a reflection. I caught her spreading poison at church, shredding reputations with gossip that tore families apart. I recorded every bitter word, not to broadcast to the world, but to share with the very people she had attacked. Quietly, in kitchens, in sidelong whispers at gatherings, I let them hear. By week's end, she was the one being whispered about, her flawless facade decaying right in front of her eyes. As for my sister, her undoing was the hardest, precisely because I let her unravel. Her obsession was that dog she dragged everywhere like jewelry. So, I waited until the community fair, her grand stage where she basked like royalty. When the judges gathered around to admire her dog, I spoke up. I told how she had left my baby sick and crying so she could fuss over her pet. How she had locked me outside in the freezing night, clinging to her retriever as if it were treasure. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "She treats the dog better than a child." That day, the ribbon was denied. They told her she was unfit to compete. Her dog wagged happily, oblivious, while my sister's tears weren't for the cruelty she had shown or me, but for the sting of being dethroned in front of everyone. By then, my parents were buckling beneath the ruin of their own reputations. Creditors pressed in. Doors that had once flung open to them stayed firmly shut. Neighbors they once leaned on turned away with coldness. And then came the final confrontation. They cornered me late one night in the kitchen. Their faces were ashen, their eyes empty. Dad slammed his palm against the table. "What did you do?" Mom's voice broke. We had everything, and now we're treated like dirt. I held my baby firmly and spoke, calm but sharp. You laughed while I begged as the fire burned. You sneered while I walked miles for medicine. You cheered while I crawled across the floor. And you locked me out into the storm. I didn't destroy you. You destroyed yourselves. I simply let the world see it. They stared at me then, but their venom was gone. Only fear remained, fear and the hollow grief of people who had lost the lives they worshipped. For the first time in that house, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel trampled. I felt steady, tall, unshakable. And so I left. This time I didn't run. I didn't crawl. I walked out, my baby in my arms, past the broken people who once claimed to be my family. They called after me, voices cracking with desperation. But I never turned back, because the real fire was never the blaze that destroyed our home. The true fire was the one that had burned inside me all along. And at last, it had consumed them. So, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And in the comments, tell us where in the world you're watching this from.